Let's add fuel to the fire. Like you, I've been watching a lot of content about the September ban list. 8th place Dave did this already, so I thought I might do the same in solidarity. You might call this reckless or stupid, but this card is worthless to me now. I can't play it anywhere, and even if I could, I wouldn't feel good doing so. Even if they unban it down the road, I think it's a reasonable sacrifice, if only to rage bait you. I want to talk about the ban list, why it's fine, and what it means to me. So let's begin by talking about the cards. At this point, I'll save you the hassle of rehashing the ban announcement again. You've heard it already, links in the description if you haven't, so I'll just jump right into my analysis. On September 23rd, the Commander RC announced the biggest, most impactful official ban they've ever made. Of the 4 cards that were banned, one of them was this dumb bird, and 3 of them were fast mana pieces. We've talked enough about the bird in the past couple months, but let me tell you what I think of the other cards. One of the big criticisms of the Jeweled Lotus ban is that it disproportionately punishes commanders with high mana value, monocolored commanders, or both. My answer to this is as follows. I was scrolling TikTok and VeggieWagon made a remark that if your commander needed Jeweled Lotus to work, it wasn't actually working. Now I agree with this to some degree, but it's also a bit hyperbolic. On one hand, yes, your 7-drop commander can't rely solely on Jeweled Lotus, but on the other hand, I've never treated Jeweled Lotus as a necessity, but a tool to give certain commanders a boost once in a while. When we're facing off against little 2 and 3-drop commanders, tuning for an early Lotus was just an all-or-nothing way to play catch-up. But the problem was that in the best case scenario, a Lotus into an early Crick, Slicer, Winota, or Voya would immediately turn games into non-games. In addition, for every case that Jeweled Lotus helps ramp out a commander that really needs it, like Razia, it also ramps out decks both close and far out of Razia's weight class. And likewise, even if we use pre-game discussion to level the playing field, our deck can now outclass the player in Axelrod Gunnarsson unless they also own a copy. And for this reason, although Jeweled Lotus was a card I respected, it wasn't one I liked. My playgroup is currently teetering at high power, but not quite cEDH, so even though they would say Jeweled Lotus is okay to play, they never really meant it. The effect is simply too polarizing between commanders, and it's impossible to define fair use. In the end, I felt bad every time I played it, and thinking back to before it existed, it's clear that decks worked fine without it. And therefore my opinion is that it was a mistake to ever make print. Also, I don't have one anymore. Mana Crypt is next on the list, and I don't feel bad about this one at all. Like Sol Ring, every deck benefits from Mana Crypt with virtually no deck building cost. For reference, all the Power 9 Moxen have been pre-banned in EDH since the God of Time willed this world into existence, and Mana Crypt ramps you a whole turn ahead of those. It's better than Sol Ring, and it's better than the conditional Moxen. And according to Commander Salt Analytics, 95 to 98% of cEDH decks they sampled ran Mana Crypt, second only to Sol Ring. But you and I both know that this difference is only a matter of price. While specific strategies like Ad Naz, Hullbreaker Horror, or Displacer Kitten piles get targeted ever so slightly by this, I feel no remorse. Then the final card on this new list is Dockside Extortionist. The RC finally executed on their years of, quote, keeping an eye on this red auto include. This card is so undeniably powerful, it's half the reason why red is competitive, the other 50% being some split between Underworld Breach and a skosh of Rograk. It was such a definitional keystone card to the extent that a lot of builds devolved into a Dockside speedrun. Is this Dockside? Is this Dockside? Dockside, is that you? Oh, there you are. Hell, the Dualcaster Twin Flame combo isn't particularly great, but the fact that Twin Flame could accidentally clone your Dockside means that it was that much more playable. And I'll be honest, I actually very recently put together a Xenia Blink deck, even though the commander has absolutely no synergy with blinking permanents, just to play Dockside with these cards, and it worked. So for all you Dockside apologists out there, no one card should have ever had this much weight carrying a color to the finish line, and the solution is to let him rest until red actually gets good cards. But that's a thing of the past. Should I burn this one too? Joking aside, let's get serious for a minute here. First, please help me grow this channel to 1,000 subscribers. It took a lot of time to script, record, and edit this video, and unfortunately I don't even make a cent off of it until the YouTube gods deem me worthy. Even if you don't agree with my points, it would help out so much if you just hit that like button and subscribed. Second, what kind of precedent does this ban list set? Increasingly in the past 24 hours, I've seen many people beg the question, then where are these cards? Of course, Sol Ring has some sort of protected species status, I guess, but are Dark Ritual, Ancient Tomb, Gaia's Cradle, and Lion's Eye Diamond safe then? In lieu of Mana Crypt, what about Mana Vault? Do you think Thassa's Oracle deserves a ban? I will die on the hill that Rhystic Study is the strongest card in EDH. It unilaterally wins games while giving its controller a giggle every time someone dares to play a spell. In fact, every deck that reached the top 4 this past year's Bonfire, Festival of Nights, Chaos Series, Mox Masters, and Silicon Dynasty was running a copy of Rhystic Study, and 17 out of 20 were running the One Ring. Looking at their statement and these cards now, it's clear that their goal was to slow down the format by banning explosive mana sources, while perhaps leaving the discussion about win cons and engines for a later date. I'm not telling anyone to ban Rhystic Study, but given how abrupt and non-comprehensive this set of bans was, it's very possible another surprise might be coming. This is wild, baseless speculation, but given how the RC emphasizes the, quote, spirit of the format, Drannith Magistrate might be an endangered species soon. Notably, 3 out of 4 of the bans were for cards designed with Commander in mind, adding to our bad track record of banning cards printed for specific formats. Should we stop designing cards like this? At least in this regard, the RC has shown they mean business and they're not afraid to ban cards just because they're synonymous with EDH. At the same time, we've demanded action for so long, poking fun at the no changes announcement every quarter. Perhaps the aggressiveness and lack of premeditation in the interim is a bit unsettling. But a huge ban is exactly what we asked for. So what are my big concerns then? First is the financial impact of the bans. Over the past day, I've heard countless anecdotes of people buying these cards in recent weeks. One of my friends recently got one and only saw it once before the ban. Of course, this wouldn't be a big deal if the cards weren't $100 a piece. Nadu was only around $3 before it got banned, and you win some and you lose some. But $100 is not a small amount of money to spend on a hobby. Some people are laughing, and I implore those people to try to be a little more considerate. Let's not spread lies that Mana Crypt is equal to cEDH, and let's not pretend that casual players don't play these cards either. In many cases, coming to own a Jeweled Lotus could be a result of luck, getting it as a thoughtful gift or saving up and trading up. For many people, committing to upgrade with Dockside is a labor of love for one specific deck. On one hand, I don't want to completely parrot what bigger creators like Tolarian Community College and Pleasant Kenobi have already said, but on the other hand, cards really should not cost this much, to the extent that TCG Player had to put out a statement adjusting the refund policy to exclude buyer's remorse. This is real. It never should have gotten to this point, and we need to start reprinting cards in a meaningful way. Bans should never be made as an economic decision, and it's simply unfortunate that this one had such a large financial impact. I can understand when players say they no longer want to buy expensive cards for fear of them getting banned, and the answer to this was always to proxy. Second is the social impact of the bans. Maldown made a fair point in his video that the ban list is more so important for Patrick Precon than it is for the enfranchised long-time players. That is, that new players need more guidance, and if we want to play cards from the ban list, Rule 0 exists for more experienced players. Now this is very true. Rule 0 is a cornerstone of EDH, and indeed I've seen a few posts already about local game stores choosing to ignore this new ban list. We should discuss what's okay to play before the game starts. My problem then is that Rule 0 is not real. It has never applied in a tournament setting. Custom ban lists confuse players who are visiting an unfamiliar LGS or playgroup, and players aren't always forthcoming about their decks. In addition, not everyone has access to multiple game stores or the capacity to adapt to multiple formats on the fly. The extreme end result is something dystopian like the absolute dumpster fire of the Wharf casual format. Don't look it up. And to those of you who say Mana Crypt is still legal in pre-DH, or try out Tiny Leaders, or Doubling Cube in Vintage, that's not the point, and I respectfully do not want to play those formats, the same way you might not be interested in Legacy or Kangaroo Court. To be 100% abundantly clear, I am in full support of the new ban list, for better or worse. After all, the point of it even existing is to bring unity to the format. To treat it as a symbol of divisiveness between the casual and cEDH crowd is a complete misunderstanding of what competitive means. cEDH does not mean playing powerful cards just because they're powerful. Instead, it's optimizing deck lists given the constraints of the Commander format. If we wanted to play powerful cards for the sake of it, we would be on Gristlebrand and Hullbreacher. To casual players, cEDH is not its own format, and we should stop treating it as such. To cEDH players, we don't need Dockside, and the whole point of the format is to overcome this meta shakeup. This leads me to my third concern, the power vacuum. I touched on this earlier, but Dockside Extortionist has been carrying a huge weight since its release. It's propped up Red in the competitive sphere for so long, its abrupt departure might be problematic in the months to come. Doomers will say that Corvold is unplayable without Lotus and Dockside, and that's simply not true. What I'm more so talking about is where the meta goes from here. How format defining was Dockside really, and is blue going to be mandatory with the absence of turbo? I can't claim to be an expert, but is it fair to say that it's Kinnan season? Kinnan never left the meta and was already at the top of the charts as the strongest Simic commander bar none. But now with one fewer Simic option, a global nerf on red-based strategies, and the banning of 2 universal accelerants, the deck that's designed to make more mana than you will have an easier time doing so. A day after the ban, we see Mana Vault spike in price, likely to fill the void left by Crypt. Is this just begging for Mana Vault to be banned too? How much more Thoracle or One Ring are we going to see? What commanders do you think got hit the hardest? But more excitingly, what commanders benefited the most? These kind of questions bring me to a good place to close out this video. Perhaps the execution of the announcement could have used some work, and perhaps we needed a financial gut shot to wake up against the corporate greed and start proxying. But I think the end result is a good thing. The reality is, a huge portion of the player base is untouched by these changes, and for those of us who got affected, we're set free from some auto-includes and headed into a huge meta shakeup that'll come with a lot of fun brewing too. I'm skeptical that the format will actually become much slower as advertised, but I'm sure there will be many more fun games in the future. Thanks to all my patrons who made this work possible. If you didn't agree with something I said, leave a comment and I'll reply. Smash that like button, please help me out by subscribing, or better yet, tip me on Patreon so I can make more high effort content. Thanks for listening.